Kevin. How are you?
Hey, Tony, what you been up to?
Oh, my God. I went to my very first polo match this weekend. I'm feeling very, very fancy.
And I produced one of my first big shows in a long time.
Dude, what's up? The show in Vegas, that airs on television tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so we were up there. It was called Recover Out Loud.
Okay, yeah, you have to say all the big star names.
It's called Recover Out Loud, and, it's Recovery Month. And
right.
A lot of people are always like, Kevin, did you ever go through a program? And I go, well, I had a lot of friends that
of course.
did, and anything we can do to get people in a better place, I'm willing to help out. So kind of stepped up and brushed off the chops and went up and produced the show.
Yeah, but you went through Crazy Town, though. I mean, you're back in it. Like, you had not produced a show in a while, and you did this show in Vegas, and it was...
Yeah, it was cool. Macklemore was playing,
all
and,
right.
They saw some old production people that I knew.
Bill Clinton was at the show?
No, it was... They had to send about a bunch of representatives from the Clinton Foundation ended up coming, and some secretaries. They had, Roll Deep. People you wouldn't even know Roll Deep with Secret Service.
Really?
It was funny. I know one of them. I'd met him before. And when we were standing on the side of the stage before I said, I go, you guys roll deep. You guys have 5 Homeland Security with you guys. I'm like, how many people are surrounding those motherfuckers like Ted Cruz? And how many do you have to keep?
You know what? It keeps the economy propped up. Now, this show was at the Westgate, which is the world famous Hilton. Where was it the same stage that Elvis had?
Presley, yeah. The bar was downstairs in the dressing room.
Awesome.
Got to check that out.
Oh.
It was fun. I had Kat Cody working for me, and she's really grown into a great production coordinator, production person. We brought a bunch of the old crew back. Katie Cooper and Jess was there. And
shows are picking up. Things are happening. Yeah. I went to see a show at the Greek. My kid and my family were going to go see 21 Pilots. Did you see that band that I sent over to you, that punk rock to you and Brett?
Yes, but who I listened to, this girl sang on this show, this recovery event. Her name is Evie.
Okay.
And
she was at the show in Vegas.
She played in Vegas, and I went back up to the room. Didn't get back to about 1:32, and Fran goes, "That Evie was amazing," and she was she just walked out stage. She did a couple of her own songs, but then she did Proud Mary,
Oh, yeah.
And just,
okay, sure.
Just ripped it up. So I am going to call out Evie. I know she has a record coming out soon.
And maybe she's on Spotify.
She's from Memphis.
Okay,
cool. I was listening to her. I think there's going to be great things from her coming out.
You're going to go to a show this weekend, right?
I am. I'm going to go check out. It was cool. The old crew invited us down to come to the second week of Ohana Encore.
Yeah, that's so cool. Beck is playing, right? And
Brandy Carlisle's on that show.
I love that song, The Joke. She's the best.
And Lord Huron, I like great.
Is this Eddie's, is it his show?
Yeah, Smitty.
Pearl Jam's going to be there. And
Smitty, who I used to work with a lot, and actually at one point I was invited after the 92 Lollapalooza to potentially come up and work with the management company. It was Susan Silver and Kelly Curtis. They were teamed up, and they had Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. And I went up there. Eric, who works with the band, invited me up to become a production, handle their productions for their tours and stuff. And I went up there, and I showed up in shorts as usual and a T-shirt, and it snowed that day. And I looked around, and I was like, nah. This California guy's still got to go home. I'm good.
See, I'm out.
So
if it's not 120 degrees in the parking lot, I'm not comfortable.
I'm not comfortable, yeah. So I didn't take that position with them. So it's going to be fun this weekend, but it is great to see everyone back working. But my gosh, the shortage of people out there working right now is really opened up the door for a lot of people, especially my students. My students have been getting jobs out there. Normally, a couple of years ago, I was hustling to get them internships. They're getting paid positions.
Even in my side of the business for, entertainment production, post-production, feature film, positions are, you would think this is an industry where everybody wants a job and in la land, but we're having trouble filling positions and qualified positions too. It's a tough world out there.
Yeah, but it would be this episode, and you don't know Brian Kuntz. Some of you who do listen to the show remember Brian. Never wore a shirt on tour, Brian. Trying to get him never wear a mask on stage, Brian. That was my problem, where we got COVID protocols, and he barely was wearing a shirt, and this was a show. He was wearing a tank top, and God, the guy just has a problem with fabric. Every time I'd see, Brian, you got to get your mask on. We're filming this we're filming it for YouTube and Google, and we're filming it, radio for iHeart's going to be broadcasting this thing, and every 5 minutes, Kat's like, can you get Brian to put his mask on? He can't be on the camera without his mask. Yeah, so it's the same. Not only, it was no shirt, Brian. all
Hey, look, you're back in the swing. You're back in the.
super
You
fun.
knew it was a dangerous job when you took it, so you're back in the swing of thing, and you're looking to do more shows. So I'm proud that you're in the swing. Everybody is. Things are moving and changing, and this show I'm excited about too because I'm a fan of the product. I use it all the time.
Product, and I'm a fan of the family, and that's why I thought it would be really fun to have an episode about the Ball family. Sterling would fall under one of those like 5 or 6 people that I would genuinely consider a mentor that I've learned from, and we're going to talk about that during this episode and some of the key takeaways I took from him in life that I've tried to pass on through my business dealings as well, in business as well now in teaching. Great family. Brian, I've known him since he's been very young. We're touching bases with the people who actually ran that stage, Ryan McLean and Justin Bauman, who actually were in the trenches.
So for those of you that don't know, the stage you're referring to is the Ernie Ball Stage. The Ernie Ball Corporation is a manufacturer of a lot of different accessories and gear product for instruments, string instruments, specifically bass guitars, mandolins, every regular guitar. I always buy this stuff. It's wonderful, wonderful. And you had a relationship with them through the Warped Tour, and you started the Ernie Ball Stage with them.
Yeah, we met, and we're going to talk about that, how that came about, and then how they invested in young bands and allowed us to do this, and eventually grew into a couple stages, Big Ernie and Little Ernie, they were referred to, and of course it wouldn't be without touching base with a couple of the bands. So I got caught up with Mayday Parade, who played on every stage on Warped Tour, including the Ernie Ball Stage.
Really?
And then I grabbed Jaret Reddick right before Bowling for Soup was leaving on tour that day. And anytime you have a conversation with Jaret Reddick, it's fun. He is a fun person to talk to.
Well, their band is a fun band. I'm Bowling for Soup. If any of you don't know them, go Google them. It's an awesome pop punk hit makers is what they are.
Yeah, and then this morning even, which won't be this episode, but I've started some interviews for future. I talked to Maggie Schneider, who's doing these great TikToks where they're mashups of each year on Warped Tour. So we're going to start including some of that stuff on future episodes. So anyone who wants to get in touch with us, text us at 818-863-6445. We love hearing from you and your favorite memories from the road. That's 818-863-6445.
And also, anybody that wants to sponsor My Live, come on. We already got Liquid Death as a sponsor, which is lovely.
And this is today's first 15 minutes. Until someone starts paying us, we give them 15 minutes of sponsorship per episode. This is my old friends, some of them who worked at Rockstar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mike Kelso and, Rob, and these guys were all like, they got a new product, and they're making it down in Austin. It's called Weird Tea.
Right on.
And they sent us some
to try out. And they're
not
sponsoring us, as we said before.
This is chamomile hemp, so I don't think it's going to get me high.
Oh, yes, it's definitely going to get you high. This episode's going to be amazing.
Chamomile hemp, though, I think you drink before you go to sleep. So after the schedule I've had this week. But Weird Tea, great product. Thanks for sending some stuff out to us.
Right on.
We're out here, and you get the first 15 minutes of today's episode sponsored and brought to you by Weird Tea.
That's right. And we haven't forgot about you, Liquid Death. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know. You're about ready to roll right into this one? Let's jump in.
Again, Ernie Ball Corporation. I love the strings. I have way too many guitars and basses, and I change them out all the time. They're the best. They have the best guitar straps ever, the best pedals.
And they make some great basses.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So if I knew how to play, probably be one I'd play.
It's all right, Kevin. It's never too late.
Oh, yeah. As you see in my living room, I've got more guitars and basses than anyone that's never played an instrument in their lives.
They're not going anywhere. Don't even think about it for asking them, because I come and play them, and Diego and I do all the time. They're staying right here.
It was great when we got to talk to Paul Van Doren and then led into Steve. I'd never met Sterling's father. So I asked Sterling to give us a little background on his father and how he influenced his life.
My father was a really creative man, but an introvert, which made it a lot different. And I was an extrovert, a lot like my mother. And I see so much of myself in both of my parents. My dad was really great at understanding that all details are important. Everything's important, and it's been something that I use all the time, whether it's, I'm sure we'll talk about some of my other things, maybe like cooking and stuff, but I mean, success has a lot to do with, it's not just an idea, it's executing the idea. I mean, everybody's got ideas. My dad had ideas. My dad was an entrepreneur. My dad, which means it's somebody that had what he thought was a great idea, but faced rejection. And I lectured at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for 6 years, and I lectured in the entrepreneurship class the first time, and I started by saying, you're absolutely wasting your time. I can't teach you to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship, I mean, it'd be nice if the things that you learn in school that can help you, but really an entrepreneurship is usually fueled by someone who's been rejected. And I'm sure the first people you talked about, the Warped Tour and the other things you did, they told you all the reasons why it wouldn't work. So my dad, I remember calling on a store when I was a little boy, or my dad's station wagon, and he came out and the guy goes, Ernie, what the world doesn't need is another bastard string set. Don't waste my time. Don't waste yours. And it was so weird to see my dad because it would really, really hurt him, but it also motivated him. So the things I learned from my dad were, when something bad happens, try and find some way of turning it into something good. Try and pay attention to your customer. Try and understand, that who the customer is, what your job is in serving that customer, and thinking about marketing in non-traditional ways because he didn't have the money to do it traditionally.
So you can see right away, Tony, why those lessons that he just talked about related to me so well. Rejection is a great motivator. Until you're rejected, that feeling, that rejection, when people told me the Warped Tour was just a stupid idea, and many people did, it just drives you harder. And it's also, understanding your customer. And I think that's what we tried to do for as long as we could, listen to the customer. And that's one of the things that Sterling really taught me, was listening to the customer, listen to their needs and what are important to them.
This is a business that his father started back in the 60s, right? And everybody was making strings, certainly. And he had some type of a unique way of getting into the market by doing something different. Like he said, don't just come in and put a bullshit set together. But my understanding, and I'll have to dive deeper, is that they kind of changed the industry. The way that they manufactured their product, the rest of the world kind of standardized on how they did it. And this is a testament to their longevity in the industry.
Where they're now getting into the third generation that's running it. And a lot of times we talk about third generation, can you pass a company down to lineage, or what happens, or does it get stuck? And I was really glad to have Brian Ball on this episode because he's really stepped up into that role. So let's bring on Brian.
My dad referenced entrepreneurship, and I think some of the things that I fortunately got from my dad and, through my grandpa in some way, shape, or form, this idea of not being okay with the status quo, not being scared to be a little different, not being scared to try something new and try something different and potentially fail. I think it definitely wasn't planned, but I know that from a very young age, I just had a lot of pride in what my dad was doing. I had a lot of passion in what he was accomplishing and creating. And I was watching this in real time. And whether it was the world's best guitar players in our living room when I was a kid, to watching my dad paint cars and go on the road or build a mobile stage, there was just so much energy there that I think naturally I was pretty drawn to it. And I think one of my characteristics is I'm just competitive with myself, and I want to try to help or do, contribute in some way that I can. And, fortunately there was, an amazing platform because of the work my dad did, and definitely lucky for sure.
But it was funny because when Sterling was talking about his father being an introvert, I said, that's the last thing I've ever related in a topic with Sterling Ball. I mean, and I mean that only in the positive way. When he walks in a room, he's there in a positive way. There's people who come in instead of an obnoxious way, but not Sterling. He comes in, remembers everything, right on point, always on point with his brand. And even myself, I was like, kind of going, how did the business get passed to you from your father? And then how was it passed on to Brian? It's being slowly passed down. It's not like here's the keys, get to work. So let's hear what's going on.
One of the things, I took over the business when I had 14 employees. And the thing is, my dad was pretty much done. He was, I don't know, 40 maybe, and I wasn't done. But he didn't hire me, a sales manager did. And when he found out that I was hired, he was kind of a little confused. And he pulled me aside when the sales manager left and said, okay, you think you got all the answers? I think I'm 22, 23. He says, you got a year. If it stays the same or goes down, you're fired. Good luck. I think the difference I did with Brian Scotty and even my youngest son, Casey, is that the opportunity was always there, but it wasn't an expectation and it wasn't a given. It was an earned opportunity.
So I know something that you hold dear to your heart, like the NAMM shows.
I love the NAMM show.
And for people who might not know what the NAMM show is, tell them a little bit what the NAMM show is, Tony.
So the NAMM show is in Anaheim every year, as everybody knows. And for me, it was the hardest thing to ever get into because you can't just go to this trade show. You have to be given a pass by a manufacturer or you have to own a music store. But it's the greatest show on earth for anybody who's a musician or anybody. Every manufacturer's there, Gibson, Fender, Yamaha, Bergsendorf, whatever kind of anything that you could ever want. And Ernie Ball is there year over year over year. And it's a wonderful place to meet up with people in the industry. I mean, the celebrities that are just walking down the halls blow your mind off. It's the greatest show on earth. I love it.
And I've always gone down there and spoke. They have an educational side.
Yeah, you're always speaking there.
I'm always speaking down there. They have an educational side where college students and young people in the business can come down and learn. And they hold the Parnelli Awards down there that I've co-hosted before or hosted. So it's kind of this big thing. I mean, it used to be really loud. Do you remember the early?
It's still loud. There's a drum section. You go in, they section off the NAMM show. You got the recording industry section. You got the horn section, the guitar section, and the drum section is always very loud.
But they used to have
awesome.
They used to have no restrictions on sound. You know that now at least
now they
have
they have booth restrictions on sound.
Before
they had to.
It sounded like those early like Cal jams. If you had all the bands playing at once.
Yeah.
Or Warped Tour. If you took every band on Warped Tour and said play at once,
that
was a NAMM show. That would be the best way to explain. But the NAMM show could also be a little stiff at times, and Sterling kind of shook
it was.
But Sterling led the way to change that show.
Different now.
I didn't think too much about the significance of it, but I did understand that the name of the show was the NAMM show, and so we decided. We put on a show. The problem is if you put on a show with artists. I mean, I remember having T-Bone Burnett in Los Lobos in 1986, in the rain. And I had, Van Halen played concerts for us at the show and everything. But the thing that always bothered me about the NAMM show is you'd have a band and you'd do something and you wanted something to stick to your brand from it. And they'd say, I saw the Van Halen show last night. It wasn't, I was at the Ernie Ball party. So all I was trying to do was think of ways to make it memorable and connected to the brand. Because one of the things that's been always so important to me, and I have no formal training on it, is how you develop a brand, how you nurture a brand, how you respect the brand, and how you make sure, like I'm going to use the word, but I don't use the word authentic, because I think when you use the word authentic, it's kind of a giveaway that you're not authentic. So it's just me personally, I wanted to find out unique ways of making sure that if we spent the money or went at the time that we'd be remembered for it.
So what are the kind of things that he did at the NAMM show?
He turned his trade booth into a theme. Like it was a theme. Like people, like you'd go and they'd have their booths and they have their logos and things and their instruments hanging up.
Right.
But you walked into Sterling's booth and it had a whole mind of its own.
The thing is, a couple things about Ernie Ball is we have ideas, but we were able to build an infrastructure as we grew of a lot of multitasking people that had the ability to create it. I didn't go to an agency to do the stages for you. I didn't go to the stages for the RV. An agency, and I didn't go to an agency or a trade show company. We built our own trade show. Probably the most magnificent one was when we were pirates. And we had a actually scale model pirate ship that had a cannon that went off with subwoofers. And
Hell yes.
I was drinking pretty good then. So I had a tapper with a hook. You were at that one. We were Elvis. We were bikers. We were rock stars. We were aging rock stars. And, for some reason, I really think that a lot of people might have thought I was immature, but really what it was was we weren't afraid to show guys some spirit, some life, some energy. And that's really what's, I think, embedded in the brand. So when they complained too much, they took the best of show away, and they named us after us for 1 year. And then at that point, I stopped doing it.
If you go to the NAMM show now, there are stages everywhere. There are major bands that come up and play. And there's, the big Saturday night where the big bands come. They've got a whole hallway. And you can see that over the time. I think I've been going to the NAMM show for about 15 years now. And over time, the booths get more creative and more elaborate. It's amazing. But I understand he was one of the first
he was he was really the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, first one that kind of stood out as a company and said, we have a personality,
Right.
It was like, we are a personality. And that personality always came through. But personality can get you so far as a company that you have to surround yourself with good people and take care of your people.
Right.
And the Ernie Ball factory was up in San Luis Obispo. And San Luis Obispo, is a beautiful area, but it's not really the most affordable area. So one of the things that really impressed me about Sterling was a lot of his craftsmen that make the guitars and basses and that do the work were living in that area, and they could afford, homes, and they worked really hard. But a lot of his new employees, when he was making the string company, was really taking off. It got very expensive to live up in that area. So he moved his string company down to Indio, California. And they were trying to develop businesses into the community there and bring people down there. And Sterling is a big golfer. He was a great golfer, very tied in with like the Bob Hope Desert Classic. When it was the Bob Hope Desert Classic, he would always host things at his house. He would play in that. And the Pro-Am, it was always a big thing for him. But what impressed me was he moved his company down there, the string company, so his employees could actually afford livabilities.
If you don't consider your employees' well-being, and if you don't take the time to take a look at what their take-home pay is versus what your expectations are, I don't think you can last 60 years. I did care. The irony is the city didn't work with us. The state pulled whatever support they're going to give us. We're going into the 14th most impoverished area in the nation. And we did it anyway. But it's really funny, Kevin, is when all these guys bought houses and this big burst came and they got all this equity and they sold their houses and left.
The summers get pretty hot out there.
Yeah, it gets pretty hot out there.
Affordability, but it falls under that category of no good deed goes unpunished, right? We learned that in life.
Try to do something nice.
I got to tell you, I mean, there was a moment in time where it was super fun. He was very involved in charities we're going to talk about. But, I was invited to a golf tournament and played in it with him. And right in front of me, it was Don Baylor, the baseball player, Bill Murray, Sterling.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Scotty McCarron, a pro golfer, was playing with him. And I had a cool crew of people playing with us. But just to be able to be around him at that point, it was always like he always had like a super fun, good people that
nice, yeah.
That took what they did seriously, but never took themselves that seriously. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Bill Murray was like just the nicest person to be around. And I've always said that we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And hanging around with those people was always really fun because you realize you'd sit around and go, wow, these people are like, they could be complete assholes and they're all so nice.
So before you were golfing with Sterling, how did you meet him?
That was interesting because I had to ask him how we met.
I had a sales manager at the time that I won't name. And I had an IT manager whose wife worked for a PR company. And I can't remember her name, but she was representing Reef Brazil, or the Reef slippers. And she thought, boy, this Warped Tour would fit right with Ernie Ball. And I'm walking through the office, Kevin, I'm not kidding you. And I look down at the trash can. So my dad taught me to look down the trash can, and there's a VHS that says Warped Tour. And your little deck that came from Staples,
Right.
pre
yeah.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I pulled it out and I watched the video and I said, this is exactly what I obviously couldn't imagine, but when I saw it, this is what we need to do. So I went back and talked to the sales manager. He goes, oh, I think it's a joke. I said, I think it's brilliant. So I called you. We met at Sherwood Country Club in the tennis club.
I remember that. Yeah.
Jack Sawney at Guitar Center met us too.
Yeah.
And we talked, and I remember saying, well, Kevin, the thing is, beyond sponsorship, I want to figure out some way, Ernie Ball creates things, Ernie Ball makes things. And what I've been wanting to do is have a battle of the bands, but I haven't had a vehicle for it. And you said, well, I think the Warped Tour would be perfect for that. So, we built an RV with 18 guitars on the side and gamification and headphone amps. And you got to realize I was coming from a time in our industry where everyone was blaming the consumer for the fact that things were slowing down in the guitar business. And they're blaming Nintendo, they're blaming BMX, they're blaming punk, they're blaming everything. And I thought the craziest thing you can do is fight your customer. You got to join your customer. And so before we went to the Warped Tour, I went to something where there was not music related with the RV and the 18 guitars, and I stood inside and every kid could play an E chord. So I realized we're just not reaching them. We're trying to, there's genres and micro genres. We're not addressing them. And so together, you and I created the Battle of the Bands that Brian built. How many bands was in the last year of that?
I think there's 37,000 the last year we did it.
What?
Yeah.
37,000
The
bands
band signed up for this thing.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I didn't think there were 37,000 bands in this country.
We would do this, and they'd pick the winners of all these people, but 10 bands would play in each.
This is nice, too. You're at Sherwood Country Club.
Oh, yeah.
The
Sherwood
Center.
Country Club. The only
Very
time
fancy.
normally when I'd get to the front gates, they would say, you missed the off-ramp on the 101.
No, but this is really cool. I mean, the idea of saying him, I mean, like you said, he was a firecracker. This guy walks in the room, he's fun. And he wanted to have gun. He wanted to have Battle of the Bands. He wanted to do this. He saw the vision. And then the way you guys laid this out so other folks can understand, it was much bigger than just, okay, there's 6 bands that are going to compete and then you get to play the Warped Tour. It was every city. Can you explain what you guys did?
Yeah, every city, there was 8 to 10 bands would play on the stage. Really cool. They had a back line on the stage, and they would play. And then the people who worked on the stage, which we're going to have on the show a little bit later, got to work with these bands. And then they would decide who were the best. Then they would fly them all out for a finals at the end. And then they would give them a huge prize pack. It was like, you got money, you got full back line, you got equipment, you got recording. Cool. But, someone had to pick those bands.
When it was, 5,000 to 7,000 bands and 50 cities that you got to pick, 4 to 5 artists to play them, it was manageable. When it got to 20, 30, 35,000 bands, it was definitely challenging. We had a team of people that would help, but even such, we'd be there with headphones on going through each submission. And, by the end of an 8-hour day going through and listening to that many bands, it's hard to feel like collectively the team is judging the bands the same way you did at 8 and then after lunch and then again at 5 or 6 at night. But yeah, it was pretty awesome to get to hear that much different kinds of music, because Warped Tour represented so many subgenres. You'd hear a ska band, you'd hear a deathcore band, you'd hear a punk band.
I said, how did you decide who was good and who was bad? Because a lot of people I want to know, bands always go, well, how do you get on things? And how do you stand out? So, Brian had a criteria for that.
I think we got pretty good at trying to figure out or weed through, who was writing things just based on, they were trying to follow a scene, or they're really creating music from a place that felt like was theirs. Because, right, Kevin, you've seen this over, 25-year period. Pop punk got hot, then ska came back, and then metal was big, and all these, there was like these waves of different genres that got big. And I think that, it's the usual. We'd listen for good vocals. Sometimes this was pre-Pro Tools too. We'd listen for good musicianship, a good song, right? Could be a metal song or a ska song, but was it a good song?
I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Good song, good recording. People always come up and go, they don't do it. You can't do it as much anymore, but you used to get a lot of this. Here's our demo. We're a lot better than our demo. I always hated that. And it was, a great relationship. It went on for many, many years with Sterling. And, I asked Sterling, what he felt at the end of all this with how he felt it all wrapped up.
Let me explain the opportunity and the gift that you gave these bands and we were able to see it, is that they not only got to play on that stage, they got it at first a VHS of their performance. We shot it for them. They'd never played with monitors before, most of these bands. They never got treated like a professional. And we treated Rand McLean and his team treated everybody like a professional. But in the end, they would get a digital download, but they would have it. So we have a guitar called the Mariposa that Brian designed with Omar of Mars Volta. And there was a detail needed, and I was still involved in some of the guitar design. And I found this artist in Miami named Attack Peter, and he did the engraved pickguard, which is beautiful, and you can see it. But he said, "Hey, Sterling, I played on the Warped Tour. I played on your stage. I'm still in that band. You have to understand that you gave us the musical highlight of our entire life."
That's cool.
And it's full circle for me to be able to create artwork for you. And he's a very popular, very big artist. But, I think, James Valentine won the battle finals in Anaheim and came out here. His band broke up and he joined Maroon 5. I mean, there were so many. I mean, James wasn't in Maroon 5 without the Warped Tour, Kevin, without the Battle of the Bands.
He came up through Battle of the Bands?
I didn't even know that.
The bands that played our stage.
Come on!
Was amazing, but it wasn't just putting them on the stage. When I talk about details, it was giving them the experience of feeling like a rock star. It was respecting them. It was giving them a DVD or a VHS or thumb drive. But we did that. And we also gave them a web presence.
Yeah,
that if they got selected, they were on our website. But I always felt like my job was to serve the musicians. I've used that word serve a bunch, whether it's the consumer or whatever, but my job wasn't to try and be one of their peers. But towards about 5 or 6 years ago, a group of them said, "You're making a record." I said, "No, I'm not making a record." I said, "Yeah, you are, and we're paying for it." So these musicians paid for the studio, did it for free, and I actually had a lot of fun doing it. So I did another one, and I'm on the third one now. And so, I don't want to retire, but I got to do other things. And so retirement is kind of a race to irrelevance. But I mean, I'm not near as involved in Ernie Ball, but I'm busy every day with a lot of stuff. And most of it's pretty creative, and it makes me really happy. But I want to say something, Kevin. I look back on a long career in the music business, and the opportunity to create and implement and execute the things we did together is absolutely right up there as golden highlight, platinum. Our communication was great. You were fearless too. I'm super proud. I'm really happy that I walked by that trash can.
So here's the thing I'm thinking, Tony. As we're getting ready to start adding live bands in our backyard as we film the pilot for the TV show,
the television show, the band.
Technically, someone in Maroon 5 played on Warped Tour. I think Maroon 5 should come play under the tree.
Hell yeah, they should play under the tree.
Kind of gone full circle.
That's right. Bring them back.
Come on back
Come
over.
on by.
We're ready for you.
We got some other big names coming too. It's going to be awesome.
And you did just pick up that Sterling's still involved, right?
Oh yeah.
I think, Brian's got a lot of things under control. He's designing his own guitars, these things. But Sterling's always going to be involved. But to run that stage and go out on the road, you got to think about it. A lot of our stages had about the same bands kind of rotating each day. They may play at different times and everything. But I caught up with Ryan and Justin, Ryan McLean and Justin Bauman, about who went out and ran that stage. And how did they run that each summer? And it's kind of a unique way how they staffed that stage each summer.
I graduated from Chico State University in Northern California with a degree in music with emphasis in audio, and have a really great relationship still to this day with one of the professors up there, and essentially talked to them about kind of farming out the very best talent from the program that was interested in live sound and interested in just anything industry related that had to do with the road, whether it be brand ambassador work or street teaming or audio or just anything in that nature or in that world. And we established a program, and we set it up so that the students that could come out and do Warped Tour could get, I think, 2 college credits for Warped Tour, which was pretty incredible. We paid them. It was not a free internship. We paid everybody, gave them per diem and salary, a weekly salary, and started farming people out that way. We had people that worked for Ernie Ball and Warped Tour from all over the country. You know, Justin was not part of that program. Justin and I met separately. But I would say maybe 75% of our staff over the years came through Chico State.
They built this orange truck, and it was pretty awesome. The orange truck was awesome.
And was it a different stage at every city?
No, they had a truck.
The same truck, and it went around with the Warped Tour.
The stage was built into the truck.
Okay.
It opened up, really designed extremely well. The backline was already built in. The sound system was built in. Mm-hmm. They were up and going. And then we decided to add what we would call Big Ernie on the Warped Tour. Now, Big Ernie was a unique monster to build on the road. And we caught up with Ron and Justin. They explained this stage.
It was trussing and like a Cordura nylon shade canopy. And that was because the paint was still drying on this stage as we were getting ready for Warped Tour, and we just didn't have the roof structure in place yet. So we went out that very first year having to manually build trussing every day, which made, set up and tear down take forever.
Oh, forever.
Yeah. And then we got back from Warped Tour, and we had a kind of an internal meeting with our engineering team and Sterling, and we were kind of just spitballing crazy ideas to build a roof structure that would be lightweight. Because the problem we were running into is that once the stage was 90% complete, we were off on our target of weight for a roof structure. So we had to come up with something that was very lightweight, that was a lot easier to deploy. And somebody, actually it was Dudley Gimple, who is retired now at Ernie Ball Music Man, but he threw out this crazy idea of like, what if it was inflatable? And we were all just kind of like, yeah, right. Wait, it's not a bad idea. And we mocked it up and got a quote on it and built it. And, it was very challenging. I mean, it was still very difficult to set up and tear down, but what made our stages so cool and so unique was just that all the gear still went inside of them, unlike the stage line stages that we used for, the other 6 stages or so. So, we made it work, and the rest was history. The pros and cons of that was it was lightweight. It was somewhat easy to set up and tear down, but the biggest con was going to be weather. Anytime there was strong winds, it was an issue. We had a high wind action plan before high wind action plans were even a thing, because obviously, we wanted to put safety first. We also didn't want to put ourselves in a vulnerable position where we could damage our stage. So we were constantly trying to deploy that thing anytime there was, severe wind warnings or anything. And as you know, Kevin, it may have blown off a couple times.
So, I was asking him, and so, thinking about that, we do think about technology and how to make things lighter and move them around and everything. But everyone has that first day. And that first day with this stage for Ryan and Justin were pretty interesting.
It was my first Warped Tour show ever, 2006, Merriweather Post, and loading out the Big Ernie stage. We're having a problem with all the trussing, which is supporting the roof. Basically, it turns into this nightmare scenario where we cannot detach all the trussing, and we're out there trying to saw these bolts off, and you got these audio guys out there, and we don't know what we're doing, and the bus is ready to leave, and our bus actually left us. Carrie Nicholson came over, and that was my first really first time meeting Carrie, and Ryan told him that our bus had just left us, and he called and got it back, needless to say.
Hey, welcome to the Warped Show.
Yeah, it's like
we got to go. We got a show tomorrow.
You've always got, no matter what tour you on, you have the first day. You have the first day. Everyone's looking at the trucks going, that's not going to fit. Or, wait, we brought too much of this. Or, you've got, like you said, saws cutting things apart, maybe on an outdoor show. I like, with this one-off show I did this week, it's like, oh, wow, you have one day to get it right. And, you always have that first day. But this first day was probably a little easier than what we're going to talk about right now.
So if you've ever drove in New York, you'll know that some of the tunnels are really low. We had a driver that managed to clip a tunnel with the large stage coming into New York and did some pretty catastrophic damage to the roof structure. And then I think we had a day off like the next day, and we ended up going to some random like guy that made custom cars out in the middle of the country that somebody from Warped Tour was friends with them or something. Anyway, we called him and he's like, come on over. I've got a metal shop. He was an aluminum welder. So he actually rebuilt our whole roof structure for us in about, I don't know, 16 hours. And I think we paid him in cash and we went on our way. It was crazy.
That's a bad day when your truck clips the low bridge. You know, I've seen tour buses that clip low bridges. Talk about a rough day. Trying to figure that one out. Like how you've just taken the top of a $500,000 tour bus like a can. I think, you know, there's a great story about, Body Count Ice-T. So I think in Europe they took the whole upper deck of it off the stage, like a rolling back one of those anchovy cans or or tuna cans. Isn't it funny how we feed on everyone else's pain and suffering? Looking back on it, but we talked about how this came about, all the bands, the local bands played. There's some big bands played on that. Now that we know Maroon 5 played on it, there's a band that played on Warped Tour that I tracked down. Mayday Parade. A lot of bands, big band now, but played on that stage. And how, I caught up with them. They were sitting on a tour bus back on the road, like so many people have to get back out there and get working. But, I asked Mayday Parade because I knew they played on that stage one summer.
We all were in different bands from middle school, on. And some of those bands even toured a little bit. And when we finally got together and started Mayday Parade, it was like we took everything that we had learned from those previous bands and kind of tried to hit the ground running. We actually had some of us were in a band called Defining Moment that followed Warped Tour in 2005 and sold CDs. And so when we started Mayday Parade, that was like that first meeting was like, okay, we have to write 6 songs, go record an EP, pay to get it pressed ourselves, and follow Warped Tour 2006 and push CDs. And that was like the goal from day one, really. And it was like, how do we, make sure that we get all of this accomplished before the summer, before Warped Tour? We just wanted to be a part of it. I mean, as I mentioned, we got our start, I feel like through Warped Tour. And we also, most of us went to Warped Tour. I knew the first Warped Tour I went to was 2002 when I was, 15 or 16 years old. And I feel like it really changed my life, and so we were just happy to be there. I guess it doesn't really, I feel like that summer kind of proved that it doesn't matter all that much, what stage you're on. I feel like the shows were still great. The crowds were big and, we just kind of made the most of it and had a great time.
So their career is attributed straight up from that stage. They started their entire career and it forced them to do an EP and submit, right?
Yeah, and I asked him, maybe that stage was a little smaller, the Little Ernie stage compared to things. And I asked him, how it was working with that crew, with Justin and Ryan and how that went.
Like with anything with Warped Tour, I mean, one of the greatest things about it is that you play the same stage every day, like literally the same stage, right? So you're so used to the size, you get so used to the size and the layout. So your spatial awareness doesn't need to change or adapt to a new scenario, like when you're touring venues in the country. So I think, after the second or third day, it was super easy on stage, and the crew, everyone was super kind to us. And as Derek said, all the shows were great.
And this is a big band. This is Mayday Parade, right?
Yeah, Mayday Parade's grown into quite a big band.
That's awesome.
And with a long career, But, I we were talking a little bit more, and I was asking him, like, Florida, a lot of bands were coming out of Florida during that period,
right?
And how to break out of Florida.
With the other bands that we had coming up, we had booked our own tours, and we started even doing that in high school. Like we would spend time between classes, or if you could, after school, I would always go to, I had a communication tech class. So I spent a lot of time, we could press T-shirts and everything there. Like routing our tours and figuring out how that worked. And also, we learned a lot from the bands that came through the Tallahassee area. And we would just ask a lot of questions. And I guess we would always get the good bills because we knew how to promote ourselves to the high schools. So we got an opportunity to learn from these other regional and national touring acts and figuring out what they were doing. And we just kind of tried to replicate that, like learn the trade, really. And we just got ourselves out of Florida, really. And that's what led us to all the different directions that we took, between doing the CD thing and also knowing how to like promote ourselves and knowing how to route our own touring. We didn't have to have the labels, but the label thing obviously happened pretty quickly. It was the previous knowledge that got us there.
Talk to the bands, but then of course Ryan and Justin had to work with these people every day.
I remember when Mayday Parade played on the small Ernie Ball stage, actually. Thought they were great. Like, who is this? It was shortly after Mayday Parade was on that stage. I think they came back for another tour that we actually met Jake Paulson. And Jake Paulson was tour manager / front of house engineer for Mayday.
Mayday brought huge crowds. I mean, and just rocked, and were always super professional and great crew. And I would see their crew out and about because I would do so many other events and shows all over outside of Warped Tour. You would always see their crew doing other things. And, that's a whole other discussion about how you see Warped crew everywhere. But Mayday was always great to have on the stage.
Mayday was already out on the road.
Right.
And I got someone who I love to talk to. Anytime I get a chance, is always responsive. Every time, it's always a great conversation. When I hit up Jaret Reddick from Bowling for Soup, I said, "Hey, you're available for? I'd love to have you on this podcast." He goes, "Cool. I'm leaving on tour that afternoon, but let's get on the phone tomorrow. No problem." It's like, he's right there. I mean, talk about one of the people that you kind of anytime you can reconnect with. And you started listening to their music while we're sitting here.
It's awesome. Bowling for Soup is great. 1984, I'm sorry. Power pop punk is just, I love it. I skip down the street listening to their music.
And then you got Beata.
Fucking awesome. I do.
Beata's over there sitting there kind of rocking out because she remembers being in her mom's car seat going to preschool. And there was Radio Disney, like jamming out to Bowling for Soup, she's sitting there with her little helmet on, strapped into the seat, But I'm sure they did not use powered vehicles in her family. It was all pedal power. So she was in the back seat riding on her way down there, rocking out to
But this guy's
Bowling
cool,
for Soup.
right? I mean,
he's great. So I grabbed him and asked him what it was like, how he got involved with Ernie Ball, because it was really weird. I'm trying to think. All of a sudden, they were going to be on that whole stage for the whole summer.
We had used their strings since we started, 94. And then we were on a little tour out west, and just happened to be going to San Luis Obispo when they were there. And they invited us in for a tour of the factory, and were kind of letting us know, like, hey, your logo is going to be on the strings, and your name's going to be there with all the bands that use our strings and all of that. And got to see how the guitars were made. And at that point, I was playing a Stratocaster, and I was just they asked, hey, would you want to just try one of these out? And so we got home from that, and after just meeting all those guys and seeing how the guitars were made, got home, and a few weeks later, a guitar shows up at my house. And the funny thing is that guitar was actually wood grain, like just a plain wood grain finish. And my guy there, Derek Brooks, I called him up and I said, hey man, this is great. I love it. But I'm in a punk rock band. Like, I can't play a wood grain guitar, like this, it looks like a coffee table. and he laughed and he said, man, you can do with it whatever you want. Just, leave the Ernie Ball logo on there. So that guitar became my Texas guitar that I've played, since then. Actually just retired it. It hangs in a nice case in my house, but that's my original first Ernie Ball guitar that they sent me, wood grain, and it just got a treatment of Texas stickers. People think it's a custom paint job, but up close, it's like seeing a Star Wars gun at Planet Hollywood. You're just, when you see it up close, you're like, yeah, that's not as impressive as it looks on TV. But,
a bunch of stickers that would end up on a bathroom stall if they weren't on his guitar.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It was like I think I went to Hobby Lobby here, and I'll take I'm just gonna buy every size Texas sticker you have and just make a cool looking guitar. And I've had it ever since. And then, that relationship, as it just grows and grows and grows as we became more popular and used their products and talked about their products, and they did more for us. We did more for them. And, we've been asked several times to take specific guitars out. Like, would you play this on this tour? The one Warped Tour that we all did where everybody had that same bass, there was, what would they call that thing? Is a Stingray, but it's like a lower end that they were making a sub. That's what it was. It was the sub bass. And gosh, there were probably like 10 guys out on the tour that had that same bass. And, we were one of them.
I mean, that's, you seed your product into these people.
Well, I don't know if you know this, because I think Sterling helps you out with your tournament, and you do such great work for charity. And so one of the things you do is you have guitars for sale that are signed by certain bands.
You bought a few of them.
I bought a couple of them. And so what you don't know is that Diego, for the last 5 years now, has been practicing on Ernie Ball guitars, and the theme song was composed and played on those guitars that we paid for charity for.
And we can only make fun of Beata because I know that I had a car full of kids driving in the carpool line, and guess what we were singing to? Bowling for Soup. Like, it was like the Hanson Daughters, whatever we were in car, My Girls.
I love it.
We were in the car singing, and I'm singing, and everyone knows Bad Singer of Me, and we're in carpool line just singing Bowling for Soup on Radio Disney. It was
they had
the right demo.
They had a sponsorship starting really early with Ernie Ball.
Yeah, so great. All of a sudden it was like Bowling for Soup on Warped Tour.
The Ernie Ball Stage was honestly our ticket into the Warped Tour family. We didn't really, we didn't really know all the bands. We didn't know you yet. We didn't have those relationships. We knew Sum 41 and, a few other, people, but really we didn't have, we're from Texas, we had always toured on our own. And Derek, actually same guy, was like, we're doing this stage on Warped Tour. It's more of a battle of the band stage, but we'd love to have just like a flagship band that just plays the whole time. And then, he reached out to you, and you were gracious enough to treat us just like we were one of the regular bands on the tour. We got the same credentials. We got ice and water and beer and all that. And we played the Ernie Ball Stage every day. And it was a lot of work. And here's why. Because then in those days, this was 2003 was our first time. The Ernie Ball Stage, since it's changed every day, that we weren't up on the big blow up calendar thing. So people didn't know when our stage time was. And so it was up to us to be out there as soon as doors opened and stay all day, every day, and just, get as many people as we could over there. But yeah, we had a nice advantage in that, the drum set was tied down to the stage, so we didn't have to lug drums up the hill every day. We got to be friends and family with the crew there, and just had a great couple of summers on that trailer. And like you said, I think it was one of those things where we took it as a really big boost to our pride and just what we were accomplishing, in that we were drawing such massive crowds to the smallest stage, on the tour. I can remember one time in Chicago that it was set on sort of like this circular walkway was the tour, and we were set up like facing that walkway, and our crowd, if you wanted to get by, you had to stay and watch our show because we closed it down.
So they were the house band for the Ernie Ball Stage. Yeah. They weren't a part of the contest or the Battle of the Bands that brought up. They were by the way,
yeah, they wanted one anchor band every summer.
They're great, great band.
And I did know, I knew them, but, it was like one of those things I'd get submitted and I wasn't sure. And I think I always had this like weirdness with Texas punk bands because kind of like I would.
Careful.
I was damaged from working
Careful.
I worked with, if anyone knows the Butthole Surfers out there,
No.
I never worked with them. Gibby could be a handful, and I had a lot of handfuls. So maybe Texas was a little bit like made me nervous about booking bands.
Right.
But then I had the Toadies and things on it. But when they came out, all of a sudden you just realized like what great people these people were. And Jaret just jumped right into the whole program.
I remember the day you said it. He's like, it's open invitation. Any summer you guys want to be on it, and we've had some of the best summers of our lives. On that tour. It's one of those things where and I mean, I'm certain that it was a big part of your decision to discontinue it. It's a lot of work, man. It's hot and it's they're long days. It wouldn't be the same if you weren't there. Like it's not one of those things. And that's what I've told so many people in interviews. It's like, if Kevin weren't there, it wouldn't be the same. It's how you ran it and the way that you treated people and just it's a family atmosphere and relationships and, it's punk rock summer camp, and just the camaraderie at night, just sitting around the buses and in your chairs and people walking by and, you go and you do your laps, you say hello to everybody and you become friends that's one of my favorite things is like you sort of spend summers with different bands. And I remember back in 2003, it was Bowling for Soup and Avenged Sevenfold just hung out all the time. Like that, those were our buds. It's like, if you could think of any two opposite bands that would have hit it off, but that's who we hung out with.
That's what I always said, you have to meet people in person and you find common ground.
That is probably the 1,000,000th time I've heard that. His exact quote was, "We had the time of our lives."
Yeah.
It was the best times we've ever had on the road was on Warped Tour.
And I don't want to, but it was like fun working that show this weekend. Because Jess, who worked on some Warped Tours, came down and worked with us. And she walked by me on the stage, and she says, it was sure good to hear Kevin Lyman say, doors are open. She hadn't heard that in a couple of years. It made me feel good. It makes me want to get out and do some stuff again.
You're back, baby.
Oh, my God, my legs are hurting. And my back.
Don't get too excited. The Warped Tour isn't coming back, but something might be coming
I asked
back.
Ryan and Justin what it was like working with Bowling for Soup because they got to be around them every day.
They brought the fun. They were one of the funnest bands that we ever got to work with. And they did 2 tours back to back on the small Ernie stage. And they brought huge stages or huge crowds and just, they were so much fun. Their crew was really fun. I'm still close with a couple of those guys today, actually. I got a chance to work with Tony, who was one of their techs at the Eric Clapton Crossroads Festival in 2019, right before COVID.
As you can tell, Ryan's just very straightforward, just good worker, good things. Like sometimes, the squeaky wheel, I always say. So I'd be dealing with that, and their stage would just go each and every day.
Just clockwork.
And I was like, at the end, at the end of this conversation, I go, so Ryan, Justin, how was it being on Warped Tour? There might have been weeks where I didn't even talk to him.
I come from experiential marketing, and I think the Warped Tour for Ernie Ball was one of the best partnerships that we've ever done. I think it was so important to building that customer base, building that artist relations roster. Getting products out there and seeing how they do in the real world and testing things out. It was such a great testing ground for stuff that we had partners on our stages that wanted to get involved with us to help us with microphones and drum sets and guitar amps and things like that because they wanted to be a part of it. Just getting the exposure for your equipment, at a festival like that with that many bands. And that's, such condensed space and time is just something that we don't have today,
It's true. They don't have it today, but these bands literally grew up on your tour, both of them. And what are they doing without the Ernie Ball stage now? Where are they now? What are they doing?
Well, they're it's one of those things. It was part of their lives, but then they went right back into it. And we're talking 2 working bands.
Right, they're big
We're
bands.
2 working
They're
bands.
awesome.
And, of course, I had asked Jaret, when COVID hit, so many people, the rug got pulled out. What'd you do during that time?
The rule was always, we'll stop doing it when it's not fun anymore. And personal lives just started to get, it wasn't the band. It was, divorce. I was getting a divorce. Eric was getting a divorce. A lot of changes in our lives. Gary was having his first child at the time. And so we just had to, I think we did the smartest thing we could have done at the time. We could have either stopped or we could have just tried to plow through, which I think a lot of bands do. We just pumped the brakes a little bit, and we took just some time to kind of just let everything at home settle down and be there for one another. And then, man, when we got back out on the road a year later or so, it was like we were shot out of a cannon. Like we were back, and we have not stopped since. And that includes, we've had Eric left the band several years ago, and Rob joined up with us, and we haven't missed a beat. And so, I guess the thing is, we're still enjoying it, still having fun, and still love each other. I went and recorded a solo country album during COVID, and I'm going to have that out in the next couple of months, trying to release it before the end of the year. Bowling for Soup, new single coming out just in a few weeks that I think people are going to absolutely love. Of course, we just released Getting Old Sucks, but everybody's doing it, which did really, really well for us. And new album in April.
And then, I asked Mayday Parade, for them, they are that working band. Every time I seem to catch up with them, they're out there touring. And, I caught up with them that morning, and they were on a bus in Florida. They were back working.
I remember after that initial, session that we were in, when the lockdown happened, the first few months of the pandemic, I think that we all kind of talked about this. I was just, it was hard to find the motivation to write music. And, I would sit and try, but everything just felt so crazy that it was hard to even like focus and concentrate on it. And then a few months in, once this all started to feel kind of normal, is when we were like, okay, this is just kind of the way things are right now. And once you kind of accepted that, we were able to get back into it. With the new album, we didn't, we don't ever really sit and have like a conversation of like, okay, what are we trying to accomplish with this album? What are the goals here? I mean, what do we want it to sound like stylistically? It just kind of happens. We just all wrote a bunch of songs and we always try to, maintain what we've built and the sound that we've kind of created, but also push into some new, territories and experiment a little bit. And that's the same here with this one. There's some of the, classic just Mayday Parade songs, and there's some stuff that we've never done before. And it's a little bit of everything. And I'm super excited about it. Really proud of the album.
So these guys have been around, Mayday Parade and everything. And, for me, it's a lot of it like, did this hiccup? Because I know in the production world and some people, like you get out of that cycle where you don't even know how hard you're working all the time. And I asked them, like, are you guys, going to slow down at all now that you've had this break? Did you enjoy the break? And they kind of summed it up for me.
Next year is going to be a pretty busy year. We, in fact, as it looks now, it'll be, one of the busiest years touring wise that we've ever done. It's definitely going to be, we'll be going everywhere that we can for the most part.
We got to sleep in and we got to party.
I look forward to it for sure. It's also like after this much time of not doing it, to jump back in that full force is a little, you get a little anxious. And again, like, as you mentioned, some of us have, families and kids and stuff, and it's kind of hard to be gone for that long of a time, but it will be nice to be busy and to, get out there and feel like you're kind of making up for lost time for everything that we missed.
Well, we definitely took a little bit more time rehearsing than we normally would. We usually would do like 2-3 days when we're in the swing of things, but we did 4, and it paid off. At least for me, speaking for myself, I'm usually very nervous at the beginning of a tour that muscle memory won't kick in, but after those 4 days of rehearsal, it definitely was good. And I don't know, now it's a breeze. From here on out through the whole tour, it's just a breeze, and it's a good time. You don't really have to worry about anything.
There's definitely these little things that I totally forgot about. Like the first show, we played Slam Dunk in the UK before this, and normally I double knot my shoes, And I completely forgot to do that. And that's like a rookie. I feel like that's a rookie move, something that I always when, a year and a half ago, I told every night I did that. And of course my shoes came untied immediately, on stage. I was kicking myself, how did I forget this?
I did that interview, and this week when I was working on stage, I remembered to double knot my shoes before I was running all over the stage.
Well, see, there you go.
Yeah,
I hear this from a lot of people. There, that big lull of not going back, and are we ready to go back? A lot of people are charging to go back, and a lot of people want to go. The audiences want to go see shows, and I know a lot of musicians that tour a lot, and a lot of their spouses and significant others can't wait for them to get out of the goddamn house, to be honest.
Well, and Jaret did touch it. A lot of people's relationships didn't hold up over the pandemic.
It's crazy.
It's rough
time.
how many people I run into, and it just they just didn't hold up. And
right.
It's kind of sad, to hear some of those stories. But one of those bands they did, those bands that went out and invested internationally have a leg up now with everyone trying to hit the road at once. The bands that have built and invested over time have a little bit of a leg up.
With everybody rushing back to start touring again, because this is how we make money in the music industry for a lot of people, do you think that there's a finite amount of audience market share? And if so, what do you think bands and promoters and people have to do to get their fair share?
I think absolutely. I mean, there is a finite amount of money out there to go to shows. I know, me and you go back and forth sometimes, but like that big shows, 21 Pilots, you're going to be packed. There's shows that are must show sees, but a lot of shows are starting to feel a little softness in the marketplace, and we're all talking about it. Now that softness is coming from, I think there's a finite amount of money. I think there's more people are suffering PTSD than we thought. We maybe thought 10 to 20%. I think it's 20 to 30%.
I went to another artist who I thought would be packed the week before, and it was a great, incredible show. And now it's mud. But I was walking around talking to folks, and they said there was trepidation about coming out.
Right. It'll come. It's going to come. But I think we're seeing more, even tickets that are sold, because some of them were sold for prior tours that were delayed and things. People are not showing up. We're seeing a drop.
But that Dodger Stadium show we went to for Green Day, that was definitely packed.
Well,
right?
They had about a 20% drop.
Did they?
Yeah, they had the drop count.
Wow.
Everyone's, it's weird when you look, but that's unfortunately, I'm not watching the band. I'm counting the in-between seats.
I know, right?
I'm
Stop working.
That's what I do. And that's even my students are now that after they take my classes, they say, I was walking through this festival grounds and they didn't have something like labeled or there's no cable ramps for the ADA kids. I go, I've totally,
blessing and a curse.
That you can understand how to run a show. Mayday Parade, I always thought of them as that young band, like the kids. Like they were always kids when they started out with me, but they've been around now for a while.
20 years.
And they've got a lot of stuff coming out, and the label's excited and everything. But I asked them, how is it as you're aging, you've got your family, you got kids at home, but, what about your fans?
You've definitely been seeing, the fan base, grow with us. Obviously, we're almost 16 years older than we were when we started this band. And so the fan base has gotten older, but there's still always those new, younger, 14, 15, 16-year-old fans that have just gotten into the band and are seeing us for the first time. And that's, that's huge that you don't really get to maintain, the touring as a band without that. That's so much of like the lifeblood of this band is that there are still these young people that are just getting into us. And, so it's really cool to see that there's definitely those like older folks that before, in the early days, it was kind of primarily those young folks, and now it's kind of a blend of as young as 14, 15, 16. And then there's some people that are, in their 40s perhaps or whatever that are coming to the shows as well and kind of everywhere in between.
Bowling for Soup, still going. Mayday Parade, still going.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie Ball, still going.
Oh,
strong.
That's going forever.
Strong, but Sterling's got a lot of passions. We talked about golf. He's got one of the most amazing car collections you'd ever seen in the world.
I'm sure.
But all of a sudden, he decided that he's going to be a barbecuer.
What? No.
Yeah.
No.
And when I did talk to him about the pilot...
We're big barbecue fans around here, as you can tell.
The pilot of the show, he said, and who's cooking? So...
we got to get him on the pilot. We got to get him at the barbecue, man.
Yeah. He said, who's cooking? So, hopefully... we'll get him out here.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, you talk about Sterling, everything he does, he doesn't do anything half-assed. He is a world champion barbecuer.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. He's won World Championships barbecue.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So he goes out and it's the same way. Like he comes in and Sterling's done pretty well for himself. Like the barbecue community, I witnessed it. Like how he assimilated with this barbecue community. He used to do a cook for all the other chefs and all the other barbecuers the night before. Like before they got into competition, Sterling would come out and cook for everyone. It was always like he got.
Maybe that's how he won. Maybe he poisoned them. They couldn't cook well.
Man, no, he is such a good cook. But
we got to get him on the make him do one of our shows and cook for one of us.
Well,
we'll get him out here.
Let's talk about his other passion, barbecue.
I've been very fortunate. I've cooked on the Kansas City Barbecue Society tour. I've been the national pork champion. I won the world championship. I've cooked 230 contests and come in first or second 34% of the time, which is a
that's
pretty
awesome.
good winning percentage. I have a company called Big Papa Smokers that's the preeminent serious smoker online store. I do culinary development for Tyson Foods. It's been an interesting second career, but I applied all the same things I did to Ernie Ball. Everything's important. Made sure that we have a charitable compound. We support 10 teams that compete for local pediatric charities. I mean, as you know, Ernie Ball and Warped Tour have always been philanthropic and always giving back. So we've been able to give a lot of money back through barbecue too.
It's like, I want to become a barbecue. You work on it, become a good barbecue. He all of a sudden develops his brand. It's called Big Papa Barbecue, but he sees a hole in the marketplace. He met all these awesome people building barbecues around the country, these people but they didn't quite know how to market their product.
Right.
So he didn't just open a big warehouse where he puts all this and tries to sell it. He goes, I will help you market your product to reach an audience, not touch the equipment that gets shipped from you to them. But so he didn't, it's talk about a cool way of online sales. He pulled a community together and represented a community out there and helped these people build their barbecue brands and different things. So it was amazing to see. And now I have to call him like right away because it's like I was walked into Barbecues Galore and there's the line of Big Papa Barbecue Spices.
Wow. He approached it in a different way where he helped brand and market their products to get it out of the...
But he doesn't have to touch them. That doesn't have to have all that... And then, he's developed recipes for restaurants. He's Tyson Foods on their, development team. It's just kind of, wow, okay, Sterling, I'm going to become a barbecuer. There's
I mean, when we heard Brian's description about his father originally, how about his passion in being on stage and going, there are those people in the world that just go and go and go. And would you describe Sterling as that?
And I think Brian kind of really kind of summed up his father in a way.
One of the few reasons that, fortunately, I never got that conversation from Sterling where it's like, all right, you think you have all the answers, go do it then. It was always supportive. It was always a belief in me. And, it gave me the opportunity to either succeed or fail without judgment, and having that support, I think helped make me want to do whatever I can to knock down walls for him and our family's business. So, I mean, he didn't quite have that same, luxury with his dad. I just, I know how lucky I am to have that support. And to echo what he said, Kevin, I mean, you look back at the, Mount Rushmore things of your career, and granted, I'm only 41, but the chance that I had to really work with you and with the Battle of the Bands and Warped Tour. And I mean, that was a seminal moment for me in my career. And I don't take it for granted at all. It was fun. It was exciting. It was a lot of hard work, but it was incredible. It was just an amazing time.
This is unique, Kevin, because we always end with a charity and you bring it up, but this is Sterling's charity, right? That we're bringing up.
Yeah, it relates a lot to his family. Sterling's got 3 boys, and this is the Casey Lee Ball Foundation we're going to be focusing on. And that was the pleasure I got to play in that golf tournament with all those people.
Yeah,
he was raising a lot of money. So I asked Sterling to talk about his foundation.
We ended up being involved I was on the board at UCLA, for 14 years. We supported research at Seattle Children's Cincinnati Children's, Texas Children's, University of Alabama, Birmingham. We raised $8.5 million for UCLA, and we've just finished endowing the chair at Boston Children's, which is, I got the Harvard Foundation to throw in an extra $2 million on top. But we've personally raised $11.5 million, and I wish it was more, but we're the largest private kidney foundation, and with a real focus of trying to make the kids that have the more than 50 terminal kidney diseases. Okay, and a transplant's a treatment, not a cure. My son's on his second transplant. So it's to make transplantation better. It's try to make interaction with other kids better. It's try to make the anti-rejection drugs less invasive. But it's been, when you really realize that I was going on, Kevin, and nothing ever went wrong. Everything I did worked. Charmed life. And I went to a doctor's appointment that rocked my world. If I have one regret in life, is that I didn't engage before that it took a kid getting sick and almost dying to get that. But that's the most important thing the Ball family's done. Right. It's more important than a guitar string. It's more important than a guitar, more important than Battle of the Bands.
I had no idea.
So, Tony, that's why he goes under the FBA category in my life.
Hell yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, it's
that's
not
stand-up. That's a lot of money. And, I mean, when you hear a story like that and he's putting it out and it's his chair, I have a son. I can't imagine. He said, it took me a while. I waited too long to go to the doctor and figure it out. And it must have been devastating. And he attacked it, I think, like he attacked marketing for Ernie Ball and everything. He attacked this issue with his son the same way. And he turned around and did something. It's just,
yeah, you know,
it's amazing.
And I was really glad we were all able to catch up. I'm hoping that, you know, we get to spend a little more time and hang out with those guys because they've had great influences. You have influences in life. You come across a lot of people. And the Ball family were very supportive of what I did, and Sterling was, and had some great times with him and, you know, learned a lot from him.
First and second place every time. I wanted to try some of the barbecue now.
It's really good.
I got to make sure it's good.
It's really good. It's really good. It's been a while since I've had it, Sterling. We've got a pilot to shoot coming up here. I want to thank you to all our guests for taking the time to come share their stories. It was great stories this time. It was really fun to catch up with all these people.
Make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube pages to know when new things are happening when they're coming out.
You know, and we could really use some help here. You know, everyone, you listen to podcasts, and it's like, please get in there and rate us. We move up the charts. More people can find us because I get hit up all the time that go, wow, I didn't know you have a podcast. And I'm like, we're on episode 16 of the podcast. And the coolest thing about our podcast is you can go back to 1 because there is no sequential order to this podcast. It's not like you jump in, it's episode 48, and you got to go listen to the 41 through 47 to figure out where you're at.
Yeah, so please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, and get yourself an interview and be on the show. Reach out to us.
Yeah, if you want to hear the full interviews, you can subscribe to us on Patreon to hear all the extra content and get our discount on our merch. We have merch now, the My Warp Life merch.
That's right.
And hats, shirts, and we'll even give you a couple stickers now.
And don't forget to text us on any topics that you want to hear about at 818-863-6445.
That's 818-863-6445. And we do want to thank Xavier Bradley.
That's right. Vivian Wang.
Vivian Wang. Beata Shem Tov.
Thank you so much. And remember, this theme song that you're about to hear right now was composed and recorded on an Ernie Ball guitar.
By Diego Arratia.
Take it away, kid.
How many of those did you get? No one could eat more than one of those.
Mad at me, Kevin. Come on. We got chili cheese fries. This is our first episode with chili cheese fries,
with
folks.
Food.
And we recommend, if you're going to do a show, make sure you buy the most unhealthy thing possible.
Oh my gosh, Tony.
Isn't this awesome? Don't tell Fran. She's going to be pissed.
Oh, yeah.
For chili cheese fries.
It's funny because now I'm hearing you eat and like, no wonder Fran gets so bummed out when I eat. She says, you've got to stop eating so loud. And I got my headphones and I'm hearing you eat on headphones.
I was hearing you too. You were totally grossing me out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.